That's perfect. Okay, so Dave, very nice to meet you. I'm curious to hear what is the story behind Opus 2?
Well, there was a first venture.
Okay.
It wasn't called Opus 1, it was called Music Plus.
Okay, I see.
So we began that business actually way back in 1971.
Oh, wow.
I was working at Waterloo Music, which is no longer,
I see,
but it got bought out by a chain, which is St. John's Music.
I see.
I started that business, Music Plus, and then we sold it to one of our employees, and we thought they were going to take the building as well after a couple of years, and they decided not to. So we had to rejuvenate ourselves, and
I see.
that's where the 2 comes in, Opus 2.
Okay, I see.
So in 2000, we came back. And
Gotcha.
So 2000,
Nice.
we continued the operation in the building because the building itself was a very arts-orientated building. I mentioned, like Bob's guitar.
Bob's
was
guitar was
here.
upstairs. Yeah.
Musicians Association, Local 226 was upstairs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we had a dance program at the front. They did ballet dance. They also did Middle Eastern kind of klezmer, Middle Eastern klezmer music that they did together. We had 3 teaching studios, 2 piano studios, and a guitar studio, as well as Bob, and an art teacher in the back, Sherry Rice at that time. So the whole building was doing.
Was kind of like a buzz with the
Yeah.
arts. How did you end up down the road of music?
Well, I was doing construction. My family's in construction business, house building, that end of it. In the wintertime, it gets cold. So I looked for something to do at that time that when it was cold. And I got a position at Waterloo Music in the shipping and receiving end of it. And I stayed with them for many years and became the person in charge of the music end of it, like the sheet music. They also had instruments, but they had the 2 departments separate, and a publishing division, which was a third part. So I kind of learned the music ropes there at Waterloo Music, and the concentration on church music seemed to be lacking in the community. That specifically for organists and choir directors, their position was more with band-related things. So
I see.
So I began importing some special items for them, and so it grew from our basement. And then we bought a 6-plex and used the bottom section of that in the basement for storage and as a unit to accumulate and distribute and have public access to. And I used to visit the schools then too and build school music as well.
Really? Okay. With a focus on church music and those resources, or
no? That's how it started. But to keep it going, then you have to broaden more beyond
your
that.
scope. I
So
see.
then I started visiting the schools and selling school-related music, and that's where Music Plus developed that part of it.
Okay, because
So it
one
was
thing
more
led to another
school
kind of
business
thing.
kind.
Wow, nice.
Yeah,
That's
so
impressive.
Well, it was really my years at Waterloo Music that got me into the
kinda
retail end of it. The
Spark
retail.
that. Nice. But how about the keyboard side of things though? How?
Well, I had 8 years old. I was taking piano lessons.
Okay.
And went to grade 8 at piano, and that was when I hit high school. And so when I hit high school, we had instrumental music, and that was a big interest. The first time I had the chance to play a real brass instrument.
Okay,
So
got you.
I spent several years on French horn, and was part of a brass ensemble that the Gallagher brothers had developed, and a lot of the guys there were pretty good players, all diverse backgrounds. So, and after they all hit university, it was interesting to see where they went, because some of those guys in the brass group ended up as computer engineers,
Okay, gotcha.
or a doctor,
Oh, okay.
The other guy is an associate to the embassies. He went to Europe and became part of the ambassadors
Oh, wow.
collective, so to speak,
Wow.
and got shuffled around from country to country.
Wow, nice.
And all different. It's interesting how music does that. That musical people
And end up in such broad fields.
yeah. And math is probably one of the, like in my brass quartet that I've got going right now. One of the guys is a professor at the university in the math department, which is specifically sort of concentrating on how people get into your program, like the worms and all that. So how he's working with that. So it's highly, math orientated too. And the other fellow on it actually develops math games. He's a gamer,
but he's also a mathematician.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
So
nice.
he's into that. And the other fellow on us is a realtor.
Oh.
So he's got to work with numbers too all the time.
too, right? Yeah.
Getting the right price, getting the thinking about the rates of mortgage, and so it's
Yeah.
there's a correlation, I think, between math and music quite a bit.
Oh, for sure. Because like I personally find music is very mathematical in nature, even though it's also heavily creative. The way you kind of break it down and understand it is very similar to math at the end of the day.
Well, that's why multiple people can play together. If it wasn't for the math, it's what keeps them together. Their own individual creativity is second to that. Like when you're doing jazz, you've got a rhythmic background there, but you play with it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But if it wasn't there, you couldn't have more than one guy playing at a time, right?
Yeah, if it wasn't all kind of rooted in the same math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole symphony orchestra. Even if you're playing in 7 pulses to the bar, you're still all doing it
Relating to the
together.
same- Yeah, I guess it's kind of like, having a team of engineers all work on the same project. If they don't use the same math, then it's not going to
Or
work.
bass. What bass are we working in? Well, we're bass 1.
We're based on. You're right.
So,
Nice, yeah, that makes sense. So I guess, do you have any musical projects currently? You said you're working on a lot of church projects.
yeah, well, and tomorrow, for instance, it's a Sunday, and my brass quartet is helping a church celebrate their anniversary. So we're playing that service. But then in the evening, every Sunday evening, I actually play for Luther Village. They have a service there. It's for the seniors.
Okay.
And I often bring friends along in to help out with a little variety in the materials and so forth.
Okay, gotcha.
But this Sunday, the pastors actually picked a bunch of very swingy kind of hymns. So I'm going to be playing piano mostly this Sunday and doing some swing jazz style hymnody with them. And they, don't sell the seniors short on their experiences in life, because the current seniors were the young teenagers when Elvis Presley was alive. We forget that they've come through the Presley and the Beatles and all that. Those were their musical influences when they were young, and so they actually appreciate rock and roll and jazz and
and all that stuff, because they've seen so many eras of music. For sure.
But then this past week was Remembrance Day, and a trumpet friend and I did a library concert and a couple of seniors concerts too, and did all World War I and World War II songs.
Okay.
And in the library, we had so many people come up and say how much remembering those songs meant to them.
Are you serious?
It was really a moving experience, actually, to do those and see the tears actually
Really?
in people's faces when you're doing some of those
songs,
very memorable violin tunes and so forth. They all, it's very emotional. Music is
an emotional thing, and I think that kind of ties into, I guess, kind of the end goal of music is, you have to move your audience, right? That's why you're there to provide them that experience. So that sounds really great.
And you got to ham it up to do it, right? You can't be like we said, that you have the math to keep you together. but you've got to go beyond that. You sometimes have to be a little rough around the edges, like a garage band. Sometimes their emotion is what's driving them forward. They don't have necessarily a whole lot of musicality, but there's something going on
But they have the
there.
passion, yeah.
And you've got to sometimes go beyond the music to make it a little more personal. And some people can do that, and some people can't. I've played with, my wife and I are doing duets right now. Why this comes up.
Okay,
We're doing piano duets for another program we're working on, the whole Christmas and Advent series of piano duets. And I'm much more lenient with my playing.
It's very technical.
Yeah, so you got to have both. You got to have both.
Yeah, both the technical aspects, but also kind of just, I guess, to follow your heart more or less.
Yeah, you can't be afraid to make a mistake and make it the music real.
Make the music real, yeah, for sure.
So
That makes
I
sense.
probably have more real moments than she does.
There you go. Oh man, I believe it.
The appreciation has to be there because, well, there's so many people actually in Kitchener-Waterloo who are into music and who are performing that often it's a difficult job finding an audience. Like that there's so many activities going on, there's so many people who want to play, want to sing, want to perform, want to be in a show, that they get a lot of enjoyment out of it, that often those people out there aren't there because they're up on the stage.
Because they're all up on the
You know,
stage, yeah.
So it's one of the peculiarity in Kitchener-Waterloo because we do have so many subgroups and many groups. There are so many different choral groups, so many instrumental groups. There's just, well, our community is a very musical community.
Yeah, but definitely we're a creative bunch for sure.
Well, and yeah, creative in all different ways, like we're talking tech creativity, art creativity. We have artists here. We have we're really quite I can see why this area is sort of a destination for a lot of international scholars and so forth.
Yeah.
Because there is this buzz to the community. We don't have any, what shall we say? You go to Europe and you've got museums and art galleries and that sort of thing. Our own little area here can't compare to Europe from the historical standpoint of what they've got artistically and what they've developed. But we've got a certain buzz and energy that things are happening now. Things are on the go, are developing. And that's a great thing and a great draw for our part of the world, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I've personally a lot of music friends that I've talked to that actually go touring in Europe. They a lot of them they say that they go and the audiences in Europe are like, wow, it's kind of like it's a small independent show. It's not a huge stage or a huge stadium, and a lot of them come back saying that for the people in Europe, it's a novel experience to see an indie show or just like a small local musician or just someone coming through.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have that outlet too.
Yeah, I'm wondering then because you had mentioned there's a lot of creativity and a lot of people up on stage and a lot of people doing different things. But we also need to kind of get people in the audience as well, right? So
yeah.
how do you think that balance could be achieved, or do you have any insight on the matter?
Well, Waterloo region being this kind of way, I think it's always going to have a somewhat imbalanced area that way. Like when you go to a larger center like Montreal or Toronto, they have also a drawing area around them that brings in an audience, who isn't afraid to travel for an hour to go see a show or something like that.
Okay.
And maybe we have to consider ourselves a little larger audience, and maybe we should be doing more intercity events too.
Intercity, okay.
Because to get a bigger audience is you got to have a real draw, a real, to get somebody to travel for an hour to come to something. And I don't think, for instance, even though all our musicians are really high caliber, that we have the names that would constitute that. So I think we're always going to be on the low end in the audience.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, Leonard Cohen would have played here, and he would have got an audience.
Gotcha.
But our local symphony is struggling, and yet they have some of the best players in Canada. We are. If we're not number 3 on the list, we're number 2 on the list. Like we're that close to the top
for the roster
from across Canada. We've got key people, but the cachet of a name just doesn't draw it. So they have to be very careful about how they do their programming. I went to see a show just a few weeks ago that was on, oh goodness, what's his name? Not Cole Porter. Unforgettable? Who did that? Do you remember him? Unforgettable.
Oh, I know it. It's eluding me right now.
Yeah, they did a whole show of his tunes and his own favorite things. And the musicians on stage all were part of the orchestra. The Ian Whitman did the bass. Cheryl Nafziger did the keyboarding.
Oh, okay. Wow.
The conductor was the associate conductor of the symphony, and the vocalist they'd brought in was a friend of the arranger who actually arranged all the music for the show because it was all very, very specific to that artist. And if I can remember. Anyhow, so that we have the people. We have the people, but we don't have a name, a cachet to bring out people who would travel an hour to get here. You know?
Oh, okay. Because I guess the key would be to get people also from the areas outside of the city. Because people would travel an hour to Toronto or would travel an hour
for a name.
For a name, I see.
Or a show. Like instead of doing the first runs in Toronto, we should be able to do some of these first runs here, and I bet you they could do them cheaper. So if we got, if we had a Mervish connection or something that they would do like the off Broadway, we would call this off Toronto. That they could prepare, get it ready, do a couple of weeks run, months or so, then you start traveling with it or doing something else.
Right, and then get it to Toronto or then get it to somewhere
Well, you'd be surprised how many of our musicians are playing in Toronto. Our guys are set musicians, session musicians, show musicians. Our current, I'm secretary treasurer of the local musicians association. Our president, Paul Mitchell, he's playing in Toronto almost every weekend on something or other. Even if it's a wedding or a bar mitzvah, it's still
he still has something to play. Yeah.
And some of those connections we have guys here of the Western Swing Authority. Every one of the members of them are award winners of either they're country music people, but they're either pickers or fiddlers or vocalists or the steel player. We have here locally the best steel player in all of Canada.
Are you serious?
Pee-wee. Yep. And he's right here and part of the Western Swing. We also have, well, you mentioned Bob. And Bob Egan, of course, is a steel player and was with Blue Rodeo. Retired now. So, I mean, and that's just looking at country. We had some of the best country beginning groups here too. We have nothing to be ashamed of. What we need is a better PR facility, and maybe work backwards as a prep area for getting. I had a fellow in this week who bought a whole bunch of opera things, and I said, "Oh, hey, what's going on here?" And he says, "Well, I'm studying. This is actually only my second year, and we're doing this and this and this, and hoping to get to Europe next year for getting some more engagements and some real opera under the belt, because it's a smaller thing, right? And he's realizes that the opportunities in North America are completely different than in Europe.
Really?
Like you mentioned, the small groups are what make it a lot of excitement in clubs and smaller venues. But opera, you need a huge hall.
Yeah.
You need an orchestra to do it right. You've got these humongous sets and very innovative lighting and so forth. And North America hasn't quite caught on to it the same way as it does the musical. We do really well with musicals.
With musicals, really?
Our musicals, well, even Dunfield Theatre here and Drayton Entertainment, they're really good at developing, actually, the entrepreneurial aspect of what is developing there and helping Canadian writers and Canadian performers and so forth. It's really good. We could do the same kind of prep work here, right, in Waterloo County, that they're doing in Toronto. And we have the facilities with the Centre in the Square and the Dunfield Theatre now. And the barn of Drayton up in Waterloo. It's not beautiful, but it's training areas. And we got talent. Yeah. And he, for his things, has to go to the U.S. or to Europe to actually make it go, because there's really only maybe 3 places in Canada that you could do an opera, and maybe they do 2 a year.
Oh, really?
And maybe they do the same 6 or 8 operas on a rotating basis. In other words, they don't do anything new and creative. They don't do any new repertoire.
They just keep spinning the same stuff.
Magic flute one more time, and all, like, so that they have, so people get the roles down, and then they can go and sing them elsewhere. But that buzz that's for indies and for smaller groups doesn't work for opera. It's a different kind of thing. But looking at the guy, he could sing Meatloaf. Like he's huge and a big voice too. I mean he could do that kind of stuff, no problem. But he chose to do the opera.
The opera. But shouldn't they do something new and creative then? Don't you think? Or like would they benefit if they did try something?
Well,
It actually is pretty
see,
strange.
there now how does Paul describes it? There are players who are like athletes.
Oh, okay.
They hone their skills and their physical, like music is very physical. I mean,
It is,
people
yeah.
don't realize it when they see all this passion on stage, but
It's exhausting.
it's exhausting, but you also have to have technique, your hands, your lips, if you're a brass player, a wooden player. There's a lot of physique involved, and air. What keeps me young is still playing, because it's very physical. And it keeps, your body has to be working to do all this
to
sort of
make
stuff.
the music, yeah.
And so Paul always describes these musicians as like a thoroughbred racehorse. That they train for that race. They train precisely to do what this is. And so that passion is almost a side effect, that they really are developing these physical skills and working on that. And often that passion has to come from the conductor. That has to be somehow transmitted to the players, because they're all there worrying about their notes.
Am I getting it right?
That's right. You know, and so it's like a racehorse, and you need that jockey on there to tell it, okay, now.
It's like you got this. You got this.
Right.
Oh my god.
So I always thought his analogy, like say symphonic and orchestral and opera, they're all like thoroughbred racehorses who are trained to do that one thing. Or when you go to the Olympics, okay, he does the 20-meter.
Yeah.
He does the 500 meter.
Yeah.
And this guy's a miler. So that they all they're working specifically towards that.
And perfecting the one goal, the one technique.
So then that whole creativity, I think, is stifling. That's why I'm a little looser with my music because I find it constrictive.
Okay,
And
yeah.
I like to vary that.
To do more of the passion
where
and
my,
stuff. Yeah.
where my wife is very precise, and it's got to be this way, and you do this, and that's
This
how.
is how you articulate
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
right. And so it's different ways, but you need both, right?
You need both the technical and the heartfelt side of things, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, that's music.
That's
But that's
music.
life too.
Yeah, right.
You got to have something you can do really well, so that you can break the rules. It's like writing anything or doing anything creative. You have to know what the rules are, but then you have to be able to break those rules to make something new happen. And if you don't have that basic rule and know when you're breaking it, oh, now that would create this, and that might be what would happen, like the bacteria getting into the works,
Getting into the stuff. Yeah.
making
For
things
sure.
happen.
Nice. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
that was quite an insightful chat.
Good. I hope somebody will find it interesting too.
I'm certain of it.